Boom, that means we are recording this session. This is the second installment of today's discussion with Brand Flora. Man, I love having you on, and I don't care if you say it's the jargon that we speak, but it definitely, listening to your presentation helps all of us become stronger proponents of just that. And love talking outdoor. It's definitely the season. Love your product. We have it at all our 41 right now. We're still building some new locations. So guys, if you are frequenting any of our locations, thank you so much at our Snap One partner stores. I've been going around the country with our grand openings. Got another one in a couple weeks at not Fort Myers, but Minnesota, where we moved our store. Yes. We moved Eden Prairie. Well, it's Eden Prairie now, but we had moved it. So come join me in a couple of weeks. I will definitely be giving away some Sonance stuff. But more than that, it's there's a educational component to what we do, and we're all about helping you guys identify where your weaknesses are, if there are any, or just bringing up features and the best vendors that we have within the Snap One partner stores, because we certainly have them. So without all of that, I'm recording this show. Brandon already gave me the slide deck, so you don't have to take pictures and so forth. I'm going to get this out in an email to everybody who registered for both of these sessions. So we had almost 100. So I will have that data and I'll get it to your inbox, so you're well prepared. But sit back, let's get to work. Definitely utilize the Q&A, and we're going to answer questions. We're going to deep dive into it, man. You guys are in for a good show. Here you go. Brandon, Flora, thank you so much, man. Turn it over to you.
No, thank you, Gary. And before I start, definitely thank everybody in the Snap One team. We've been working with a lot of the markets for quite some time. We've been nationwide with Snap for about the past 12 months or so. Couldn't have a better partner. Hey, it's outdoor time. And anytime I can get in front of you guys, it's a fun experience for me. But if there's one thing that I want to have land with you guys is I understand how valuable your guys' time is. And instead of just come up here for an hour and kind of do a drill down in some product that, you guys might take a feature or two extra away, I figured we'd start to talk a little bit more about something that might help your business. And that's basically how to sell more outdoor audio. I've been with Sonance for about 8 years. I've been in the industry for about 25. And through that amount of time, you see dealers doing really well. You see distributors doing well. You work with other partners in different categories of that, that we're selling to that do really well. And, we do a really good job of jotting those notes down. And, our goal is at the end of the day for people to just sell more. So if we can leave this next 40 to 50 minutes or so with you guys having some tips or tricks that we've seen around the industry that you can execute on, then I think that's a win. From an agenda standpoint, essentially, here's what we're going to discuss today, guys. First of all, we're going to go over the audio industry as a whole from an outdoor standpoint, and this category of outdoor, which is called outdoor living, and how that's been impacting what we can be selling outside. The more you understand that, the more you're going to sell for sure, especially once you start to understand what your customers are thinking and spending. I think with anybody selling speakers or anybody getting in the home, it's really important to understand performance and aesthetics and how those play a role with your customers' buying power, or anybody else that they're working with that might have a decision in their buying power as well. Again, when we look at the dealers and the distributors that are by far selling the most and have the happiest customers, it's people that can execute in that space fairly quickly. We're going to talk about how to have more success with your clients. A lot of that's going to be centered around the things you're saying, the things you're not saying, specific things to bring up. Obviously, because it's it's kind of a Sonance training, we'll have a couple of slides on some product just as a refresh. But my goal here at the end of the day is for you guys to have an agnostic approach to outdoor audio. I think we do make a phenomenal product, and I'd love for you guys to choose me and always do more business with Snap AV, with Sonance. At the end of the day, if this helps you sell something where a customer just has another brand preference, I'm all for that as well. We'll do some recap at the end, and then we're going to stop a couple of times throughout this presentation to make sure that we're addressing any questions, concerns, or anything like that you have. Before we get kicked off, I'm going to start you with this, and it's a little bit more of a rhetorical question. So kind of ask yourselves if you're on this training. Do you feel like you are getting every dollar that you can be getting from your customer today? And simply kind of, obviously we're doing an outdoor training, so think about that in that space. And we'll kind of reiterate that and ask you again as we go through here. So if we're just going to go ahead and dive on in, the outdoor opportunity, what the heck does that mean? Well, if there's one thing we know, customers of all markets are looking to have an enhanced experience within their outdoor entertainment area, backyard, larger yard, patio, things like that. We know that for a couple of reasons. So at Sonance, most of you guys probably know we work with HGSA, we work with Osio, and a lot of manufacturers work with ProSource. We also do a lot of work when it comes to design. So we work with architectural firms and architectural associations like the AIA and conduct a lot of training for them. We do a lot of things in the landscape industry as well. One, obviously to sell more speakers and drive business, but it really helps with a lot of analytics when we're thinking about what products to come out with or what strategies to help you guys sell more audio with. It really helps. And, you know, I'm pushing 40, but when I was growing up, bathrooms and kitchens sold houses. You know, not here to say that, you know, you're going to buy a house with a phenomenal backyard and a complete tear down kitchen and bath. But the reality is the industry at whole is seeing a heavy flux in projects into the yard and into outdoor living. And a lot of that has to do with the categories increasing. So decades ago, when you did your yard, you might add a pool, you might have a small seating area, but as lighting's developed outside and different things with kitchens and grills and all these different cool things that you can do with fire pits, and also the design industry's caught up a little bit and modernized a little bit, customers are spending a lot more than they ever have outside. Again, when they're polling things like how much did you spend on this kitchen remodel versus this yard, it's usually more in the outdoor space because people are spending time outside. So this is a really interesting graphic. I love this for a couple of reasons. First of all, this is sourced from the American Association of Landscape Architects. Think of it like a CDO 100 for what people are buying outside. And I look at this in two ways. Number one, obviously, if we're interacting with a home and the customer has done anything to their outdoor space, roughly 50% of the time, they're already looking for an outdoor audio solution. That should bring you guys confidence, because I know some of you guys out there struggle to get outside, whether it's just something you forget about or you're letting the weather kind of dictate what you're pitching. Totally get it. Let's try to address that. The other thing that I see is I look at this document and I think about how I use my outdoor space, how family members and friends that I know use outdoor space. I walk a lot of projects throughout the year. And I don't think there is a product on here that customers would use more than the outdoor audio system. So go with me on this for a second. I live in Phoenix, Arizona. Most markets are starting to warm up right now. Nobody's touching a fire pit or a fireplace for months, right? You can do a phenomenal lighting system. Those are starting to get more and more expensive, especially as the lighting companies are realizing the AV world is a little bit more prevalent for them than, let's say, the landscape world. And we're getting into FX and color changing lighting and all these things that are very expensive. You're not turning those on during the day. Dining areas, kitchens, grills, all these things, they're really big typically when you first get them. I can tell you, as I got different grills or my outdoor dining set and all that stuff, we used it for, you know, the first couple of months consistently. Now a lot of that stuff starts to kind of shy away. The outdoor audio system is going to be on every single time your customer's outside. It doesn't matter if it's just the homeowners. It doesn't matter if they have a bunch of people over. I could be cleaning my pool or pulling some weeds in the summer and my outdoor audio system is outside. So as we talk to our customers about different things and we're talking to them about specifically things like cost, the one thing I really always like to bring up is all of the other elements that I'm seeing being installed on the project and say, hey, look, we're going to make a custom quote for you. But the first thing I can tell you is this is going to be the most used thing in the space. That should give you guys some phenomenal confidence to spec any price solution because it's much more of an investment and the customer is going to be using it quite often. The next thing that I get, and this is mostly from dealers, I do get it from some marketing staff as well, but it's the selling season. And I'll be honest, I'm the first one to say that a lot of manufacturers have kind of caused this problem. Everybody on this call, everybody that I interact with, for the most part, thinks that their outdoor selling season is a specific window. 90% of the time, it's at least larger than they think. And what's happening is we have manufacturers that are focusing on drive times for promotions and spiffs and giveaways and all these other things, because that's when we get the majority of our sales happening. The reality is outdoor audio specifically is a game of at-bats. And if we're not talking about outdoor audio every single time that we're interacting with a customer, it's going to be a tough one to have a lot of success with it. Here's a couple of tips that we see when people are really executing on it. Okay. First and foremost, don't necessarily focus on the month of this. This is a graph here I pulled that's average temperatures in January for the United States. Yes, of course, we have some deep purple areas where it's going to be pretty cold. It might be frozen. Great. Let's take that stuff off the table. But I want you guys to start looking at one thing, and it's as you guys are driving around your neighborhoods, or maybe you're in an area where you guys are doing a project, ask yourself one question. Are landscapers out? Are people doing maintenance? Are people doing construction projects? If none of those three things are shut down, chances are you could be selling an outdoor audio system. Now, I get there's variables. I would tend to say that Texas, for the most part, does a really good job of being able to have great weather for more year-round audio. At the end of the day, the last 2 years, we've had a couple of weeks where it's been frozen and they've had some trouble. Great. Treat those situations as those small situations. You might even be in a house speccing some indoor speakers, and it might have snow on the ground. Phenomenal. If you're not talking to your customer about, hey, I know we have snow on the ground, but what have you done to the backyard? Are you guys considering anything there? And let's talk about some possibilities. Give yourself a follow-up. What better way than when you're done with the indoor proposal to say, hey, I know we talked about the outdoor audio. Obviously, that's not going to be a thing to happen right now. But is it okay if I follow up with you in the next month or so as we start to heat up? Because what you guys choose to do there might dictate what I do inside. And when you're speccing amps or running wire or planning for networking, that's a real thing, right? So treat this as you treat it, right? Let's pick in the Northwest, right? If you're not doing a little bit of work in the rain, you're probably not working. So don't let that weather necessarily affect you. I get ground gets hard in certain markets, heard, it's not lost on me. But I think we'd all agree if we can treat it more as what's this day looking like today? Can I pitch outdoor audio? I think we'd all have a little bit more success, and you guys would see yourselves closing a little bit more deals than you are today. So let's real quick talk about what customers are spending. This is another thing I get. So I'll talk to direct dealers a lot. Just to quote some MSRPs, our Garden Series product, phenomenal 8-ohm, 8-channel product, $4,400, Patio Series, about half that. And I get dealers all over the place saying, wow, that's expensive. Wow, that's really inexpensive, specifically for the cost. I think, again, to build some confidence for you guys to be able to throw out numbers like that with no problem to your end user, let's talk about what some things cost in their outdoor space. If you guys have done a backyard remodel of your own or been a little bit more heavily involved with your projects that you're working on today, you'll already know this stuff. As we look at this backyard, first and foremost, I get it. Very, very nice backyard. We're going to look at some pictures of some more standard backyards as well. I'm seeing a really beautiful custom pool, some turf, some beautiful hardscapes, some rocks, water features, mature palm trees, fire pit, bar area. Guys, all of this stuff is a premium. And as we've already kind of established, none of those things will be used as much as the outdoor audio system, because every single time you're outside, that's probably going to be playing, regardless of if you're entertaining or it's just kind of maintaining the backyard. To quote a couple of numbers, the cheapest pool you've seen, as long as it's an in-ground pool in a market, is $50,000. Clearly, this is much more. A mature palm tree, guys, with delivery is $10,000 a tree. So the next time you walk a backyard, I can tell you, as I started doing this, it really helped me to look around and go, wow, this customer's spending a lot of money. I should have zero problem asking for a little bit bigger piece of the pie, specifically because I know I'm selling something that they're going to use often. So this is a little bit more typical of a backyard, right? Your middle-class family, if you will. This is a backyard that I would typically see in my neck of the woods. You have a pool, you have a Baja, there's some beautiful travertine, pergola in the back that goes into some stone columns. Again, just to call out some numbers, those Baja chairs are extremely popular in Arizona. You actually fill them up with water, sit kind of halfway in the water, but it's designed for that chair to kind of cool you down. Those chairs are $1,000 each. So when I go out there and I'm seeing these plans and I'm talking to the customer about what they're doing, I'm making mental notes in my head to go, hey, this is not a problem to sell a $4,400 system plus wiring plus custom. That's not necessarily I'm going to bring up to the customer, well, hey, you spent $1,000 here. It just gives me some extra confidence to go, let me go back to the drawing board. Let me spec out this home and we'll, make sure it's the exact right product for the space that you have. Here's the one thing before I give you the quote, I'll tell you, it'll be one of the cheapest things in the space, but it's by far going to be the most used. And that's really impactful when you're talking to your customers. This example of a little bit more rural backyard, still beautiful, some sod to hardscape, a beautiful fire pit area, some fencing, right? Beautiful view. I'd love to hang out there. And then for the effort of time, we'll kind of fast forward here. The other thing I would say, obviously all of these things, when we look at what customers are spending on shrubs and trees and landscaping and pools and all of these different elements, we're going to win on the audio side from a cost standpoint. But there's one other common denominator, and that's every single one of these yards has a very well designed aesthetic. Clearly, the customer cares about what things look like. At the end of the day, there's one thing that the AV industry does that no other industry does, that's dealing with customers on projects. And we lead with performance. We love to talk about numbers and dB and output and frequency response and carbon fiber ROHA cell and throw patterns and all of this stuff. None of that matters. So I would challenge with you guys, especially you guys that answered the question ahead of time, hey, I can probably get some more dollars from my customer. Let's just assume that the customer thinks, and you can even tell them this, hey, no matter what you do, we're going to make sure this thing performs. We're going to make sure this sounds exactly how you want it to sound. I'm more concerned with how you want this to look. And let's make sure that we blend any technology we put back here into your space, so we don't impede or compete with the design, we complement it. How does something like that sound? By doing that, immediately you're getting rid of the customer that says they're not an audiophile, which is like 95% of who we deal with, right? I've done a lot of demos throughout my days, and I've been with dealers that do the good, better, best, and it's all performance. It's the same speaker, just different materials that have better detail. The customer thinks the least expensive one sounds good. So if we're going to grow how big our pie is, or we're going to close more deals, what a better way to create more value by talking about how you're going to implement a design in the space. And I'll leave you with this before we take some questions. Every other project that this customer that you're interacting with is doing, kitchen remodel, bath remodel, crown molding, epoxy on the garage, the performance is just a natural given. They might have a couple of questions, but it's, hey, it's going to perform how I want it to. It's all aesthetics. You're never going to see someone designing a kitchen talk about the difference between performance of level 5 and level 1 granite. However, there is a very, very, very big difference in price. So kind of let that sink in. All right, guys. So our first questions here, I'll pull up the chat in a second, but we've discussed the outdoor selling season. We've discussed the outdoor living category and how customers are spending so many more dollars there in really every market. And then we've kind of discussed what customers are spending. So if you have any more questions, by all means, shoot them in the chat and we'll see what we have here. Eskimos deserve outdoor audio too. I agree with it. Now I'm going to add one thing to that. Let me make sure my slide advances here. I think. It's the funniest thing I see. I have the privilege of being able to travel all over the continental US and interact with dealers and interact with customers with outdoor audio. Okay. The customers that take their weather for granted are the customers with the best weather. Right. So I get people all the time that live in areas where, yeah, you get cold. Let's say Chicago, right? You know who really appreciates on a warm day in like let's say March? Somebody in Chicago, right? It could be 40 degrees there. They're wearing shorts. The people that live in California, the people that live in my neck of the woods do take that for granted sometimes. So although we see that as more of our better audio markets, if you will, specifically outdoor, because there's a natural perceived selling season, the people that appreciate the better weather are the people that don't get it all the time, right? Go to Seattle. Those guys love the sun. I get over the sun real quick because it's out too much and I get sunburned, right? So use your market as a means of how to have success, right? I'll say it again. If you are in the Seattle area or Northwest area, or maybe it's the Northeast, and you're trying not to get some business when it's rainy or when it's cold outside, it's going to be a tough one for you. You got to use every at bat that you have. I'll stop talking real quick. Did we have any other questions that people want to put in the chat or ask?
We're clear as of now, my man. Just
Awesome.
carry.
So let's go through it. So let's talk about what's important to your client. We've kind of alluded to it before. Of course, they want a good sounding speaker. Unfortunately, a lot of speaker manufacturers make a lot of really good sounding speakers, and those might not even be at the typical higher price points, at least when we're talking about what your customer perceives to be a good sounding speaker, okay? At Sonance, we believe this statement wholeheartedly. We believe that your speakers should blend into the design of the space and be comfortable to listen to. What the heck does that mean? Well, let's walk through it. First of all, let's talk about the aesthetics. I assure you, to your customer, again, think back at those yards that we showed you where all that attention to detail of design was important. Aesthetics are just as important as performance, if not in some cases more. The reason I know that, again, we interact with those dealers that go, well, this is a 6-inch speaker. This is the 8-inch speaker. The 8-inch speaker is going to have a bigger frequency response, bigger throw pattern, all these jargon and buzzwords that frankly, your customer doesn't really understand, but they go, you know what? This one sounds just as good as well. If we can start blending in more aesthetics talk and how things are going to be blended into a space, you're going to have a lot more success. And that kind of leads us to why we designed the product this way. The Sonance speakers specifically designed for softscape areas like garden and patio were designed like Hadco lights. You can easily do what we're doing by making a traditional on-wall looking speaker and just doing multiple of them throughout the space, but nobody's going to pay for that. By making smaller speakers that I can hide within bushes and shrubs and trees and all of these different things, I'm creating more value with my customer, and therefore I can ask for a more expensive price. Now, this is probably one of the more controversial slides because people hear comfort in our world and go, that's background music. And it couldn't be more further from the truth. So let's unpack what we mean when we say comfort. To be comfortable to listen to, one, you have to understand how the customer plans to listen to music. You have to plan the right coverage area for it. You always have to have fidelity. It always has to have detail and bass. It has to sound good. And you also have to match it with the right output. And in order to understand that, again, I think we need to probably unpack some ideas of the different types of audio we sell. So you can even talk to your customers about it. So first and foremost, hopefully you guys understand 2-channel. It's been in the industry forever. I had my days at 2-channel. I absolutely loved it. No, that is not a prototype Sonance speaker. Hopefully you guys know that's a Bowers & Wilkins Nautilus speaker. But when we start to think about how we would talk to a customer about the experience of 2-channel audio, there's a couple of things that come to mind. One, it's a stationary listening experience. So first and foremost, you're going to set up a chair. You're not going to be doing anything else. It's all about the music, right? You're not going to be chatting with anybody. There's not going to be any interruptions. You're going to have 2 speakers. It makes sense for me to have 2 speakers. I only have 2 ears, right? And I'm stationary. And well, what's the experience, right? You're going to get this beautiful soundstage experience with ambiance. A lot of people might close their eyes and it kind of transports them right on stage. And this is the experience when we're doing an art of the demo in a higher end 2-channel room, we pitch to the client and it nails every time. And it nails every time because that makes sense. 2 speakers, 2 ears, stationary, all about the music. So having these bigger speakers that separate drivers and all that stuff makes a heck of a lot of sense. When we talk about surround sound, what's the experience that we typically pitch, right? The big buzzword is, I want to be thrown into the movie. I want to be right in the middle or immersed in my movie. So what makes sense? It makes sense first and foremost to have a couple of different seats that are static. It's typically, again, all about what I'm doing. So it's all about the movie. It's all about the audio that's coming out of the speakers. You might chat a little bit with a buddy as you're watching something, but you're typically not holding a conversation as you're listening or watching a movie. Because I want to be thrown or immersed into the movie, it makes a heck of a lot of sense to have speakers all around me. So I have speakers in the front, speakers on the side, speakers in the back, speakers above me. See how this all kind of makes sense? Essentially what I'm doing is I'm designing a speaker system that way. I can have Star Destroyers going over my head, bullets whizzing by me, dinosaurs roaring at my face, and that's going to deliver the surround sound experience that everybody knows, right? The miss is typically when we get to music around the home. Now, the first thing I want to address is I called it music throughout the home. I didn't call it distributed audio. Everybody on this call knows what distributed audio means, right? And there's a reason for that. We're in the industry. I've been to a lot of demos or a lot of project walks or even troubleshoots where we're using the jargon distributed audio and customers go, huh? Oh, my speakers? The more we can make a customer comfortable, I think they're going to be a lot more comfortable as well to give you a little bit more dollars and be willing to listen to what you're saying. Have you ever Googled what distributed audio shows? Google distributed audio when we're done with this training, specifically hit images, because most people that Google things will hit images to try to just get a quick understanding of what it is. They're not going to want to read through a bunch of paragraphs. If you Google that, you're going to see a bunch of system diagrams with networking. You're going to see a bunch of audio matrices, even some video matrices, which is weird, but you're going to see a bunch of stuff. The customer just has no idea what it is. So they're going to be nodding and going, oh, okay, you distributed audio. By simply calling it music throughout the home, it's going to give them a lot more a comfortable experience, and they're going to open up a little bit more about what they're looking for. So now that we understand that, let's talk about what the experience is, because there's really two main differences with music throughout the home than there is with 2-channel and surround sound. And the first thing is, it's not a stationary listening experience. It doesn't matter if it's inside or outside. I'm not saying you can't be stationary and listen to it. Most people turn on the music and they're going about their day. They're walking through the home, they're walking through their property, they're hanging out with friends. They might be in the pool swimming a little bit, then jump up to the fire pit. It's more of a zone thing than I'm going to sit here and just listen, right? The other thing, and this is really funny for me to say as I sell speakers for a living, this isn't about the audio. 2-channels about the audio. If you want to listen to heavy, detailed music and, be able to differentiate when Diana Krall breathes in or breathes out, that's 2-channel. You're not talking during 2-channel. You're not doing any of those other things. Music throughout the home's a mood elevator. Remember, you still need fidelity. You still need detail, bass, output, all of those things. But the most important thing is coverage. I need to design a system in a way to where I can walk through this entire space, not have peaks and valleys or hot spots and cold spots. And if Gary was in my yard, I would need to be able to have a conversation with him. We're entertaining, we're interacting, we're hanging out, right? While we're talking, we're not talking over the music, and the music isn't so loud that we feel like we need to yell. By designing a system like that, that will execute on any customer expectation that they're going to possibly have within their outdoor space, specifically when it comes to music throughout the home. Let's unpack that a little bit more. So you guys have been in the industry for a while. You guys have probably seen this diagram. We've been using it since 2007. Essentially, what it talks about is the difference between a 2-speaker system outside and an even balanced coverage system outside. We used to call it the traditional versus the optimal approach. I think you guys get the gist. Essentially how this works, and I love even talking about this and showing this to customers. 2 speakers in spaces where you're moving about the space, like an outdoor yard, backyard, patio, things like that, don't work. It's going to be loud in one area and sound fine. And then you're going to try to get some sound into a space where it's maybe not as audible as you want it to be. And you're going to have to do that with a volume knob because you don't have more speakers to get sound there. And anytime that I have to increase the sound pressure or the SPL, sorry to use some jargon, in a space with a volume knob, you're going to create peaks and valleys. You're going to have a situation where it's way too loud in one area, still not that great in another, and it's going to be a problem. The other problem with this situation is I'm typically mounting speakers higher just under the eaves because they look better there. And at the end of the day, you guys all know we balance aesthetics versus performance with how we install products every day, right? And you're essentially pointing the sound at your neighbor. I mean, the average fence in the US is 5.5 feet. You're pointing that sound right at your neighbor. So you're not getting as good a coverage, but your neighbor's hearing all your speakers, and that can essentially create a problem. By designing a system like this and putting multiple speakers throughout the space, number one, I get that even coverage. So no matter where I go, I'm going to get audio. That's number one. Number two, I don't have to use a volume knob to get that audio in those other spaces. I just add a speaker. That is what changes the system, and that's what makes the big difference. By putting multiple speakers in a space and creating sound with more speakers and more devices, I have the ability to have a conversation while listening to detailed music with nobody talking over anybody. The music's not yelling over me. I don't feel like I have to talk loud, and the music's by no means background. By delivering that, you're showing a customer a differentiated experience they're willing to pay for. The other beautiful thing, I'm typically designing those against the perimeter of the space and firing them back into the home. By doing that, I completely eliminate sound immediately transferring to those neighbors. I actually, without a fence, will lose about 20 to 25 dB the minute I go about 5 feet behind those speakers. These are all things that are important to talk about, specifically if you're going to do a demonstration for a customer, because you're setting yourself up to answer rebuttals that might happen towards the end of the sale. So if a customer goes, well, hey, look, I don't know, my old house just had those 2 speakers. Hey, you like that even coverage we showed you, right? And how you and I can have a conversation in the space while not talking over the audio and not feeling like we're yelling. Oh, I loved it. I was all about it. You can't do that with 2 speakers. Hey, you liked how when we went behind the system, it dramatically diminished in sound. So we know you're not going to, you tick off your neighbors. Yeah, I loved it. You can't do that if you point speakers at your neighbors. You're setting yourself up for success just by the couple of things that you choose to talk about. Another really good thing to do is use analogies when we're talking about audio. So at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter how many speakers you sell or anything like that. If they understand the analogy and they understand that you're going to design something specifically for their space. I find it really easy to talk about theme parks or specifically Disneyland. Most people you're going to interact with have been to some form of theme park or Disneyland. And if you think about it, specifically on some of these main streets, they have the best version of music around the space or distributed audio. For instance, this is Main Street in Anaheim. It doesn't matter if you're on the left, the center, the right, all of the music sounds the same. You could be listening to It's a Small World, or maybe it's one of the themes from Nightmare Before Christmas, if it's Halloween or Christmas, right? It all sounds the same. It doesn't matter where you are or walking up and down the street. They just achieve that with tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, even millions of speakers in specific properties. You guys don't need that much for those yards. The other thing that's really cool is you can be talking with your friends and family about what rides you want to go to, where you're going to meet up later. Do you want to maybe grab some food? And you can understand multiple people, everybody talking around you. But again, that audio volume of people's voices is not over the music playing in the park, and the park music is not over you. That is the exact same thing that we're doing here at Sonance or doing with this systems approach. Another really easy way to talk about selling speakers or selling more audio is to talk about lighting. And I know that might sound a little counterproductive to some of you. One, I think it's always fun to talk about lighting. Huge category, should be for you. But two, we all do the same thing. A lighting diagram in a project, whether it's indoor or outdoor, often looks like the same speaker diagram. And that's essentially because we do identical things. Lights throw light and I throw sound. At the end of the day, if you start talking about an outdoor space specifically, nobody's going to try to light an outdoor space with, let's say, 2 floodlights, right? You're going to have areas where it's way too bright. They're going to look ugly. You're going to have areas where it's way too dim. What you're going to do is you're going to work with whatever lighting manufacturer you do, and you're going to sell, up lights, down lights, other specific, maybe color changing lights. You might have some string lights, path lights. There's all sorts of different things that you're going to sell for a lighting system. Yet when we get to speakers, we allow customers to tell us, 2's good. By bringing this up to the customer and kind of mentioning, well, hey, look, you would never probably do, 2 lights in a family room or 2 lights in a larger kitchen. Why do you think we should try to do that with 2 speakers? And using that analogy of really, really bright areas and really dim areas, it really kind of makes what you're talking about start to make sense. Gary was talking about this. I'm not sure who was on the call as I jumped on, but I love to use this buzzword. At the end of the day, we're all sleazy salespeople to your customers. So even if you built the best relationships, if they don't understand why you're trying to sell them 8, 12, 16 speakers, 2 separate subwoofers, and they don't understand that even coverage, it's going to be a more difficult sell for you, even for those customers that do trust you a little bit. By using some of these analogies, it really makes customers understand, specifically for people that aren't really into audio, which is going to be the majority of people that you're interacting with. So look, as we go through some of the slides that we've just touched base on, and we look at outdoor living, how big that's getting, what customers are spending money on, how many customers want outdoor audio today, the kind of ideal experience for outdoor audio or music throughout the home, and some of these things that we've talked about, we know that you can have success by just doing a couple of things. Number one, talk about it every single time that you can. I get that it's a really easy thing to skip. A lot of guys a lot of companies tend to, essentially just talk about what the customer inquired about. Hey, you wanted to do this television and this upgrade on this 5.1 system, so that's what we're going to talk about. Hopefully all of you guys will start to walk the rest of the home. Hey, while I'm here, you don't have to do any of this, but let's take a look at some of the other things that you're doing in the home. We might be able to plan for some of those things, and by kind of readjusting and maybe redesigning what we're doing today, make it cheaper for you in the long run. And that definitely goes with outdoor. The other thing is we should be demoing stuff as much as we can. So it's not lost on me that not every Snap location has a demo kit. That's something that we're looking at. However, we want to make sure that it's added value to Snap because it's going to be a Snap investment. At the end of the day, the one thing I don't want to do is have a system just sit there in a location and never be checked out by a dealer. If there's one thing we know, it works By taking a system out, we have an awesome product where you can do 1/4-inch plugs and it sets up in 8 to 10 minutes. You throw it around a customer's pool. There's a couple of things that happen. One, they immediately understand even coverage and the difference between 2 speakers and a system. The other thing that starts to happen is if they were maybe second guessing doing some outdoor audio, it all of a sudden needs to be on the project now. They're starting to pull back from other areas because they understand that they'll use this all the time, right? And then 2 or 3, it adds a lot of emotion. It's really important as well. I'll run into a lot of dealers that might have somebody meet them at a distribution branch or meet them at their office with the kit. Do it in the customer's home, even if it's just a dirt lot. It adds so much more emotion to what you're watching. Typically, other family members will come out. They're picturing themselves using it. I can't tell you how many times, and how many demos I've done to begin with, but how many times a customer will just say, hey, can you just leave this here, right? It's so easy at that point if you just talk about it 100% of the time and then demo it as much as you possibly can. Let's pause here for some more questions, and then we'll talk about a couple of Sonance options and do a recap.
Nothing in the queue right now, guys. Daniel, Garrick, Joe, John, Jordan, Kevin, let's bring up some questions if you have them. Doesn't matter how far out, the discussion can get. We got a guy here who knows everything about outdoor, let me tell you. So hit the Q&A.
If you don't have one, don't feel like you're going to hurt my feelings if you just to put something up. But there's no dumb questions. I can assure you, if you have a question or even a challenge on some of the things that I'm saying, I assure you somebody else does. So let's address it. Let's work through it. And the last training we did, we had a quick dialogue about a job where one of the speakers was buzzing a little bit, and we were able to give a couple of things on how to troubleshoot that, and we'll follow up there. So shoot out anything you got. So look, we've discussed a lot of things on a high level that you guys can execute on regardless of the brands you're selling. Obviously, as we're doing some training, I want to make sure that we go over a couple of slides just as a product refresh for you guys. So Patio Series has been a phenomenal product with us. Hopefully you guys know it. Hopefully you guys have heard it out in the field as you guys have installed it. Patio Series is the entry point to our lineup. It starts at a 4-speaker, 1 subwoofer system. And the reason we did that was, one, we wanted to be a little bit more competitive in the entry level kind of outdoor systems market. And by doing 4 speakers, that allowed us to do that. The other thing was we would have people sell some other systems, and they would essentially puzzle piece a 4.1 system together. And when you do that with a product that's not designed to be a base configuration of a 4.1, it will always play, but it won't always play correctly. So what essentially happened was people were taking our higher up flagship Garden Series product and making a 4.1. And based off of the ohm load of each of those speakers, the amp only sees about 13 ohms, and it'll play all day, but you're not going to get any output. And of course, as we're talking about doing training outside, people want to play it a little louder, and especially inside the home, and output's important. And we would get troubleshoot calls. This completely alleviates that. So if you need to do anything other than the 8, you need to scale down at all, let's do the Patio Series system. It rocks all day long. It's a 4-inch driver, doesn't really sound like it. It's a phenomenal 4-inch driver. 8-inch woofer is very, very, very punchy. And that 4.1 is designed to cover about 1,000 to call it 1,200 square feet. Essentially how it works is each speaker is not 8 ohm, but when you line up and daisy chain in a parallel wiring configuration, all 4 speakers and the woofer, the amp sees an 8 ohm load. Because of that, if you're using my amplifier, which is that SR2125, or you're using any other amplifier that's 2 ohm stable, I can double up on anything I do. So I can do a 4.1 or I can do an 8.2 for a space, and that'll cover around 2 to 2,400 square feet. Okay. This 100% was designed to be able to be powered by a couple of different products out there. You can use a Sonance amp. Those are very popular. Remember how I mentioned, talk about the outdoor audio, even maybe when there's bad weather outside. Maybe you design it where you're doing a amplifier for the home and have a couple of spare channels that I can then toss a Patio Series, in the backyard once everything thaws out or gets a little warmer. Nice, easy way to make it less expensive for your customer. And even maybe at its infancy of a configuration, use like a zone 2 out of an AVR, okay? Not here to disparage anybody. 100% the best sounding way to do this would be for the SR2125, simply because the amp was designed for the system. I can tell you too, a lot of dealers, unfortunately, are still focusing on wattage. Wattage is only as good as how it's measured. And unfortunately, wattage in our industry is how contrast ratio was in 2002. So when I look at a product that's 125 watts like mine, that's all channels driven. Obviously, we know that there's products out there that just don't do that and won't have that same level of output. The other thing that we do really, really well is we have the ability to throw current. And that's where we're going to get output. That's where we're going to get bass. There's a phenomenal transformer inside that amplifier. So when we're talking about a product assortment, you guys are going to stock both units. It's going to be a patio with an amp and a patio without. Guys, that's the best deal in town with an amp. We don't sell it a la carte anymore, but that amplifier was $900 MSRP. I think with the package, it's an extra $200-300. So heck, sell it with the amp. Use the amp somewhere else if you got to, but that's a phenomenal way to do it. The best sounding that you can get the system for sure. From a wiring standpoint, very, very easy. You guys are going to essentially daisy chain everything. I'm hoping that everybody out here is going to use a 14 gauge 4-conductor wire. Like a lot of dealers will ask me, well, can I use 16? And absolutely. Essentially, what's going to change if you use 16 gauge is you can only go a certain amount of linear feet because this is an 8-ohm designed load. The problem with that is typically dealers will underestimate the linear feet. And then there's some other things that stack up on you. Maybe the speakers are a little too far apart just because we had to put them that way to either stake them or make them look a little bit better in the space. Then maybe the customer's listening to like Pandora. By no means will Sonance ever tell you we need FLAC files or Deezer or Tidal to sound great. However, as you stack up the most compressed audio that you can get, which is free Pandora, plus the speakers are a little too far apart, plus you're using 16 gauge, you can start to see how some of those things will start to impact performance fairly quickly. 14 gauge is not much more. 14 gauge is going to save your life. So use that 14 gauge. The other thing I like to point out is we typically like to wire it in stereo. So you'll notice you have left, right, and the bottom one, left, right, left, right, left, right, left, right. It doesn't matter if you start on the left or the right channel, but just that you alternate. I understand that I do run into dealers that go, you know what, it's ambient music. Let's just run it in mono. Sure, you can do that. Just make sure you factor in the ohm load, right? Look, the idea though, guys, it's going to open up so much more. We've tested this with multiple amplifiers, with our amplifier, running it in mono. Using our amplifier specifically because we have DSP built into it, or essentially adjustments for the problems in the space, we don't need to run all the speakers on one channel and the sub on the other. So because we don't need to do that, do yourself a favor and run it in stereo and open it up. If I wanted to do an 8.2, I simply keep adding. It's that easy. And by the way, I don't think I mentioned this in the first training, but it does not matter where you place speakers or subs in the line. We don't need to go 2 speakers, woofer, 4 speakers, woofer, 2 speakers. You can kind of put them where it makes sense. We've even done some jobs where you might have one zone, but you might have like a hot tub zone and a fire pit zone, and they might be across the yard from each other. Well, you can come out of the house, run your 4 speakers and a woofer around the hot tub, then go the 60 to 80 feet to the other one. And as long as you're not maxing out to, let's say, 300 feet by the time you hit your last speaker, you'll be fine. Now you've created 2 spaces, again, one zone. So all on, all off, all one volume, one not. But you specialize the space where maybe in the middle, the customer didn't quite need sound. Garden Series, our flagship 8-ohm product. There's a couple of things I want to address here. First and foremost, you guys might not know this. This is designed with very, very similar, if not in some cases, identical parts to our Landscape Series product. We get a lot of questions of, I want to sell Landscape Series. I want to sell Landscape Series. Why? 99% of your jobs, you do not need 70 volt. You're actually going to run less wattage in 70 volt. You don't need to run thousands of feet of wire. Something like this, where you can run, 300 feet, linear feet of wire, would cover those spaces absolutely no problem. The only difference is you're feeding more wattage to your product. You might lack a little bit in bass just because you go from a 12 to a 10, but by the time you're talking about the money savings, add a sub to bring back in that extra bass. This is such a phenomenal system. It's such a phenomenal price. So this configuration is designed to be an 8.1 or more, as we've stated before. So please do not sell 4 speakers, a sub, and an amplifier and do a 4.1. Sell the patio there. And if I double up, I can do up to 7,000 square feet. So let's think about that for a second. If I'm doing a Garden Series system, Think about how much 7,000 square feet is. That's going to run you about maybe $8,500 MSRP, add some wiring, add some custom installation. If I did that with other products in the industry that are, let's say, 70 volt, and I don't need that, that's going to cost me $15,000, $20,000, depending on what you're doing. 7,000 square feet all day. You can do that with 300 linear feet of wire. And if you think about that, don't think about 7,000 square foot backyard. Think about just how stinking big a 7,000 square foot home is. That is a lot of audio in that customer space at a 16 speakers and 2 woofers. This one, you jump to a 2-way satellite. You also get an adjustable knuckle. You have the 10-inch in-ground sub. But essentially what we were able to do, guys, was take what we were doing in that flagship product, take all the 70 volt transformers out of it, which are a lot of dollars, and give you a really compelling offer that you can throw way more power to and have it sound amazing for a larger square footage at a cheaper cost. From a SKU assortment, it's really simple. We have products with an amp, an 8.1, an 8.1 without an amp, and then we have a 4-pack of satellites and an extra subwoofer. And the reason we have that is we want on this one for you guys to be able to do a couple of added configurations. So you guys already know how to install this. It's identical to patio. We're going to sell 14.4. We're going to do the speakers about every 8 to 10 feet apart. We're going to daisy chain wire. So left, right, left, right, left, right, left, right. Sub gets both sides. If I want to add a sub, I simply add a sub. By the way, another thing that I love doing, I'll do demos all the time. I did one the other day and the customer goes, well, how many subs do you think we should do up here? I said, well, I think we should do 2 based off of the size of the space. But if you're not confident, do 1. Let's run the wire over here. You can add 1 later if you wanted to. The system is so easily installed where you don't have to daisy chain everything through the woofer. It just goes right out of the amplifier and you just keep going to where we can do that. There's no more compelling sales pitch than going, hey, if you're not happy with this, call me. The fun part is they almost call you every single time. There's going to be configurations where maybe I want a little bit of in between, right? I have a couple more feet. I want to cover that spa to the left of the pool and 8 speakers just isn't going to do it. That's where that 4-pack of sats comes in. So I can jump up to a 12.2. And again, if I really want to go full bore, I can do that 16.2. And simply I would sell 1 with an amp, 1 without an amp. Okay. So before we close here, I wanted to give you guys 3 takeaways. Remember that question that I asked you guys in the beginning, a little bit more of a rhetorical question, but do you think that you are getting every single dollar that you could be getting out of your customer? Hopefully, as we were talking about the outdoor industry, what customers are spending, how customers are using audio, hopefully some of those things about talking about aesthetics really landed. That's how everybody is interacting with your customers. We're the anomaly in the AV world talking tech. So understand your market, understand when and when not, maybe you should be offering things, which should be more often than not. And again, if you got snow on the ground, if it's really bad weather that day, but you have an opportunity to talk to your customer about things inside the home, plant that seed. Ask if you can follow up specifically. So when, months down the road, when you do clear up with weather, you can simply say, hey, remember when you told me to reach back out to you? Well, I'd love to show you something. Let me bring a demo system out so we can show you what's possible. And then again, understand what customers are spending. Anybody that tells me that a customer isn't interested in spending a couple $1,000s on an outdoor audio system has just never done the due diligence to see what people are spending outside. It is so much more money than you think on things that they are using a fraction of the time versus the audio system. I think one of the most important questions you should start asking your customer that's going to start a dialogue is, hey, how do you want this to look? Right? By the way, steal this for other stuff. I love using this with like Sonance. Hey, how do you want your Sonance to look? Because everybody asks for Sonance, right? You want to sell a Sonance amp with some speakers and maybe an audio matrix and some other stuff? Or do you want to sell a Play 5? By asking these questions, it's going to open up a dialogue about how they want things to look and start pointing things out. Hey, I know you paid attention to the design of this pool and this is such a beautiful tree fence. What do you think about maybe putting some speakers on the bottom of this tree fence here? They're going to be completely invisible. You'd never see them, but sound's going to project out of them. And it's going to give you this beautiful ambiance of even coverage, right? With that, again, customers are always going to have more perceived value. They're going to understand a little bit more about why more speakers. And that is how every other person they're interacting with on a project, whether it's a trade or a contractor, is talking to them. It's all aesthetics based. Let's approach every customer like the performance is given. It's going to sound good no matter what we do. We're going to ensure that because that's what we do. Let's talk about how you want it to look. And lastly, before we take some questions, look, if you're not talking about it 100% of the time, if you're getting a customer and not talking about outdoor audio, you're leaving money on the table. I don't care if there's a hurricane in town. Again, ask for that follow-up, and then demo. Customers don't understand so many speakers. We've been selling systems like this since 2007. It was us and James Loudspeaker. So now I can say it's just us. But so you guys understand this. You guys understand more speakers. You guys understand sats and subs and all these things. But to your customer, they're still new. So it's very difficult to try to just explain this off of a brochure or a website. I can tell you there's no more compelling thing versus just setting something up around somebody's pool and hitting play. And I'll leave you with this. And I didn't do this on the first one, and we should have, because I love this statement. Again, I have a little bit of background in 2-channel audio in a prior life. And any of you guys that have done a 2-channel demo know it's kind of a really cool experience, right? You bring the customer in. It's typically a very fancy room. There's some beautiful speakers, typically with some Macintosh stacks or some other really impressive looking equipment. The speakers just make a statement, right? They're like art. Often the customer kind of knows, hey, I'm going to hear something really cool, right? You dim the lights, you set everything up with the art of the demo, you explain a couple of things about the track that the customer should listen to, and you hit play. But the customer has a lot of expectation. Okay. When I'm setting up an outdoor audio demo, I got a couple of dirty cases. I'm running a wire around somebody's pool. The speakers are often just kind of put on the stake and propped up, because I'm not going to put a stake through somebody's grass, right? That's not cool. There is zero expectation from your customer on how this is going to sound. They have no idea. Typically, I'm sweating a lot too, because I do demos in 110, 120 degree heat in Arizona. Okay. But then you hit play, and there's just this smile that happens on this customer's face. And you got them, because they don't understand the difference between 2 speakers and a system. And you have it at a moderate volume. It's maybe 65%. And you walk them through their yard and show them how it all sounds the same. There's no peaks and valleys. And then you drop your voice a little bit, so you can show them that, hey, even at lower volume levels, lower talking, you can hear me, I can hear you. And the music by no means is background. When we talk about really identifying what the music throughout the home or distributed audio experiences is, that's it. So the more you can deliver that for your customer, they have zero expectations for what you're doing, and you're going to hit it out of the park every single time. So we're going to take some questions if you got them. I saw some stuff in the chat, and there's my information, by the way, if you'd like it. We also have some phenomenal local reps in every single market. If you don't know who your rep is, you can always feel free to reach out to me. Let me give you an idea. I can help you with anything Sonance, anything iPort, even though we're talking outdoor audio today. Questions, concerns, troubleshooting. How do I overcome this objection? Chances are, if you're looking for some support with a demo, it'll be your local support. As much as I love the Snap account, I typically don't, fly into Texas just to do a demo. My budget's not that big. So guys, we'll talk and take some questions. What do you got?
Yeah, Blaine, thank you for the compliment there, and Garrick as well. Great solution to help avoid annoying the neighbors. I think he was talking about when you were describing speaker placement and height and so forth. So good stuff there.
Yep.
John Mayer, I'll tee this up for you, man. I'm doing a takeover on a project that has 10 SLSs, 10 subs, and 40 satellites. It's powered by 5 750 amps. They are missing the canopy on 2 of the 10s. Do you know any place I could get replacements?
So call me. I'm curious of why they're missing a screwed on, glued on canopy. Take my information down, John, and let's figure that out. Great question, though.
Yep.
That's a really interesting one. It's almost as if they needed a driver replacement and did some of that stuff. So as you unscrew all of our woofers, you're going to find out that they're also still glued, because these things get buried, and we want to make sure they're as water sealed as possible. So typically as well, we don't do much service. So you guys will know if you've ever dealt with a warranty with Sonance. Number one, look, if your end user calls customer service, they are going to direct them to our warranty policy. If you or any Snap employee call us and say, hey, I bought this from Snap, I bought it like 4 years ago, what can you do for me? I'm going to take care of it. We also really don't do service work. I'm not the guy that's going to make you jump through hoops and do some triage in the field. makes much more sense for me to just replace something. So John, I think you and I could probably talk about that one for like 20 minutes, but let's figure out what happened, where they bought it from, and then let's address the situation on how we can take care of you. Okay.
Hey, Brandon, do you know, are there additional SKUs for parts like that are part of our catalog with Sonance?
So the only additional SKUs we have are accessories. So every single product we talked about, patio and garden, comes with the ground stakes. We understand that certain people might want to mount their speaker or mount it in a tree. You guys have that product assortment. This is not because you are just distribution. Our direct dealers, we don't do service work either. It's just not our game. When we look at how much it costs to ship parts back and forth, the dealer's time doing the work, the time that it takes for a tech support member to maybe walk them through it, what the dealer's experience is there and the end user is there, we'd rather just do swaps. It's very rare that we will send something out. Typically, it's if I'm on a project and go, no, I'll do the driver swap, or one of our other field coaches that we have a couple of them. And even that's really, really rare. I'd rather spend my time fine tuning a system and then, just swapping out the dead product, right? So that's not something that's limited to Snap or limited to distribution. If you were a direct dealer and called for a canopy, we're probably going to tell you, hey, let's figure out a way to swap that woofer. So John, again, shoot me a call. That's my cell right when we end the call here, and we'll address it.
Got it. Let's take this question from Raphael. So the sound that is going to be displayed is not stereo. Even if the speakers are left and right connected, it is going to be sounding mono. So I think maybe he hasn't heard it or know specifically how the preferred way to go about it with the stereo spread. Maybe you can talk to him
so
about
how
that.
we wire it, right? Each one, you're not going to have the amplifier do some mono. I'm going to run out 14.4. I'm going to go red and black to my right channel. I'm going to go green and white to my left channel, and I'm going to keep going. The subwoofer is dual voice coil, so it gets both sides. But 100%, especially if you have your our amps, well, that SR2125 doesn't give you the IP addressable DSP, but if you had it, you would be able to run it in some mono if you wanted. But no, remember, you're running a 4-conductor wire, so you have a left channel and a right channel, so you're getting stereo. Now, the reason why you want to go left, right, left, right, left, right, left, right. Imagine this is my backyard and I have a pool over here and a fire pit over here. If I did left, 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 right, 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 I am only getting mono over here and mono over here. That's why we go back and forth.
Got it.
Yes, on the display program, Joe, reach out to me. There's a couple of things that we can do. We have a display program that we can work through Snap for your home. We can also sell you demo kits as well. So it just kind of depends on what you want to do, but reach out to me. We have a compelling program. We'll hook you up.
Hey, Brandon, I thought really quick, I'd ask about the amp. Is it optimal to run it at full? And then, you know what I mean? Just how amps are, what is the correct or setting for the amplifier?
Are you talking about full output?
Yes.
So we don't give you the ability to adjust the output on that.
Okay.
We send it at full. We send it at full for a couple of reasons. On our other amplifiers that do very similar things, but they have the IP addressable DSP. So just a little bit more options, but you don't need it for patio or garden. We give you the ability to essentially adjust the output volume of the amplifier. We actually used to ship it at 0 dB. Now we ship it at plus 12. And the reason why we ship it at plus 12 is we were getting so many tech calls every single day about customers who were just putting a source on our amplifier and it had a weak output. Look, we realized that, things like Sonance, Hios, there's a million, Vessel, all those other things are really popular. I use them, right? They don't always have the best audio output. When you do your amplifier at 0 and you hit play and you start to max everything up, it wasn't as loud as customers wanted it to be, specifically outside. When we now ship our amplifiers at 12, and by the way, this was right when I started, so about seven and a half years ago, we just never got that tech call. It's the right thing that the customer's looking for. There's other ways to limit things through your source typically and things like that as well. But on the amplifier that we're talking about, the only adjustments that you have the ability to do are essentially softscape and hardscape adjustments. You can adjust the EQ based off of what's connected to it. And then you can adjust a little bit of dB on the low and the high. So essentially what you're doing is you're adjusting 2 knobs, and there's a chart up above that says, if I'm on bank Q and EQ3, this is what I get. You adjust the two knobs. If you've ever set up like a subwoofer, that's typically same exact thing.
Got it. Okay, let's look. Anything else here? You answered Joe's question. So that's it, guys. That brings us to the top of the hour. What a totally useful discussion. Thank you so much, Brandon. Always a wealth of information, man. I hope I catch you out in the field and so forth. We got a couple of grand openings and so forth, but let's continue the discussion as anywhere we can at any of our 40 Snap One partner stores. All right, guys, stay tuned and check my event section because I got a couple more webs coming up. I got stuff like RTI and I got stuff like Access Networks coming on the program. So there you go. Brandon, I'll give you the last word there.
No, hey, just thank you very much for attending. Anybody that might have some further questions, by all means, give me a call. Execute on a couple of those things. Buy into it and see what happens. I can assure you, even if you're selling amazing amounts of outdoor audio, you're going to sell more. We see it at our dealers that do really well. We see it at our distributors that do really well. So we're here to help. Our reps are here to help. Let me know how we can.
Yep. All right, guys, stay tuned for my email, which will include the recording of both of the sessions today, as well as Brandon's slide deck. From all of us at Snap One Partner Stores, thank you so much. We'll catch you guys next week. Brandon, take care, my man.
Thanks.